Have you ever felt the urge to explore? To go see new landscapes and scenery that the world has to offer? To escape from home and excuse your responsibilities for some time? Maybe you've only had one thought like that, or two, or maybe 100, and sometimes you'll act on those thoughts and actually go out to see new things. But lately, that's been difficult. We all know the big issue going on in the world that prevents many of us from seeing the great outdoors. There are, of course, some places I would love to explore in my lifetime, and that would be the North. To travel through Alaska and Canada, maybe even see the Scandinavian countries. Those regions are the most beautiful in my eyes. To breathe in the fresh, cold air of the Arctic North will always be on my bucket list, and here's why. I started playing World of Warcraft back in 2008, right before the release of the expansion Wrath of the Lich King. This expansion pack gave us players a new continent to explore called Northrend, which was full of icy landscapes, boreal forests, and freezing fjords. Exploring these landscapes as a kid while living in the snowy high peaks of Colorado made me completely fall in love with these types of environments. Northrend was the first time I really witnessed the closest thing to taigas and tundras. While it was in a video game, the zones of Borean tundra, Howling Fjord, and Grizzly Hills took influence on those real-life biomes. Borean tundra has a wide variety of colors and contrast. The northern lights shine above while the grass varies from a darker yellow to pine greens and dark reds. The immersion is really amplified when you have the sound on and are able to hear the howling winds. I'm being honest when I say I literally get cold when I enter these zones. Grizzly Hills has one of the most iconic soundtracks, and it fits the zone perfectly. The towering trees make it hard to see the horizon, but that adds to the beauty of the zone. Everything here is so green and peaceful. All my problems disappear when I get immersed. These lumbering woods remind me of the giant redwoods in California, and those are a sight to behold. Howling Fjord is inspired directly from the Nordic countries and mythology. The beauty of this zone reflects that of places you can find in real-life Scandinavian countries. Howling Fjord is home to the Vrykul, a Viking-inspired people, which adds to the Viking-esque vibe that you get from this zone. All of these zones are a mixture of taigas and tundras and other frozen biomes from the real world, and these regions are just absolutely beautiful. Regions like this call to me, and I will always answer to them, such as Hytale's Zone 3, Borea. Borea is a mixture of all these zones I listed and more. When you think of the Arctic North or northern climates, expect to see those places in Borea. Hytale Zone 3, even though I haven't played the game, is my favorite so far. The atmosphere that Borea gives off is just fresh to me. I feel like if I built there in game, then every time I left my base, I would just be starstruck at the view. Let's get into what makes up the zone of Borea from what we have seen so far. First, Borea, like other zones in Hytale, have a major elemental theme behind them, which makes up much of the climate of that zone. Zone's one element is earth, so there will be lots of grass and trees and have a temperate climate. Zone's 2 element is wind, and as such is very dry and has a desert-like climate. Zone 3 has the element of water and has a polar climate, so it's very cold and icy. Those elemental themes cover the zones. However, each zone is made up of smaller biomes, like the real world. In Borea, we know of different biomes, but not all of them yet. I'll cover some that we have seen, but we do not know the official names for them, so the names I list off are purely speculation and just nicknames I have given. In this image, we are in a pine/boreal forest biome. There's fauna and many mushrooms scattered around. There's also some pretty interesting terrain generation over here by this tree. In the distance, we can also see a very large mountain, with some prefabricated structures, also known as prefabs, at the base of it. This image is similar to the first, showing a pine forest, but with a small vale in between, containing a stone circle and, I believe, an Outlander camp towards the back. The Outlanders are a race that we will encounter in Borea, which I'll get more into detail with in just a bit. We also see these blue, glowing crystals in the stone circle, which could be elemental water crystals. This scene is beautifully shot with a giant mountain in the back. The first video clip of Borea showing a similar scene to the previous image. A valley with a river flowing through, a stone circle off in the distance, as well as some tall mountains, and many trees. We can also see a glacial cliff, which adds even more of that frozen chill I enjoy from these climates. This video is covered by a flurry of snow and fog flowing through, showing off some environmental effects which fit perfectly. Sandwiching in between a big mountain and a large pine forest, we can see the snow valley, littered with pine or evergreen trees. We can also see these large stone columns, which add some pretty interesting variety to terrain generation. Heading to a colder location now, we entered the snow-covered taiga. Here, we can see tall snow-covered trees, a dead tree, and some ice spikes, as well as the same stone columns we've seen before. There's also rams and an owl posted on an ice spike, two of many creatures that are found in Borea. This scene is more than likely located higher towards the peaks of mountains based on the amount of snow and ice that we see. Moving back to the Outlanders I mentioned earlier. The Outlanders are a faction that live within Borea, and are speculated to worship the main antagonist of the Hytale story, Varen. This is speculated because they have similar green eyes and or a green crystal in the center of their chests. If that speculation is true, then we can assume the Outlanders would be hostile to us players. A pattern can be seen with Zone 1 and 2 when it comes to the races. Zone 1 has the Quebecs, a small tree-like race which we would more than likely ally with, and the Trorks, a giant brutish race which we would go against. Following that pattern in Zone 2, our allies, the Farrens, a fox-like race, and our enemies, the insectoid race, the Scarix. This pattern more than likely repeats in Borea, so our enemies would be the Outlanders, but our allies would be the Fauns, a race only hinted at in a concept art piece. We've seen much of the Outlanders, and they are the closest thing to humans that we have seen. The Outlanders live in settlements within Zone 3, and can be a variety of different classes. I say classes just as a classification system to what type of mob that they can be. There's the normal Outlander warrior, who wields a sword. The ranger, who wields a bow and has the ability to hunt animals. The cultist, who has a metal guard around their face to stop them from presumably seeing. The priest, who wields a magical staff. The Outlander chief, who are the brains of the group and give orders. They also wield a shield and what looks like to be an axe. Finally, there's the Outlander Colossus, a mutated giant who is far more powerful than the other Outlanders. This guy will definitely be dangerous. This race reminds me much of the Vrykul from World of Warcraft, except more magical and corrupted. I assume these guys will be the primary foe of Zone 3, but not the only foe. There's a variety of wildlife within the wicked woods of Borea. There's wolves that we've seen interacting with the Outlanders, polar bears and penguins, rams and owls, the ice dragon, and of course the Yeti. There's also been a new mob shown off in a recent postcard, which I nicknamed an elemental golem. All of these mobs have the capability to interact with each other or the environment, imitating a real ecosystem. All of the mobs and fauna and prefabs make Borea what it is. There's no doubt in my mind that I won't like Borea. This zone checks all of the criteria I look for when searching for beautiful landscapes. Everything we have seen so far makes it very promising, just like Hytale itself. Every day that passes, my excitement for Hytale increases. Another thing I am excited for is the upcoming Hytale Creat-A-Thon, hosted by the well-known Exodus Ablaze and Red Dunes. This is a community fan event which will showcase a lot of creators in the Hytale community. It takes place this April 30th at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. There will be a link to both of their channels in the description, and you guys should definitely check it out. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did, and can now see the beauty of Borea.